to the rulemaking process. And next, we will really get into the kind of the real content of this meeting. We'll review the draft rules. We have some questions prepared for you all, the RAC members, and then I'm sure you all have some questions that you'd like to discuss as well. So there should be plenty of time for that. And then we also, like always, will have time for public comment. And at the end of the meeting, I will talk about next steps and future meetings. Are there any questions before we get going? And can everyone hear me okay? We did a sound check before, but sometimes my my sound can go soft for no reason. So don't hesitate to tell me if that happens.
Lily, question. Hi, Daria
Hi.
from Pharma. Would you like us to hold questions until after you've reviewed changes, or do you want us to ask questions as you go through the document?
Great question. Let's start, if you can switch to the slides, Karen. I'll go through the process a little bit and talk about that, Daria. Thanks for the question. So here we are. You can go to the next slide, and I think probably the one after that as well. Yeah, let's do introductions, and then I'll talk a little bit about the rulemaking process for those of you who are new, and then I'll go in a little bit to kind of answer your question more, Daria, about how I'm thinking today will go. So let's start off with introductions, and I just have these in alphabetical order. So let's go ahead and start with Beth Ann. Beth Ann, are you on? I know some people are still joining. Beth Ann, if you're on, we can't hear you. I don't see your name listed though. So let's go ahead and go to Brett.
Hello. Oh, there I am. Brett Michelin with the Association for Accessible Medicines, AAM, represents generic and biosimilar manufacturers.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
And again, right now we're, because I know we have some people who are here as interested parties. Right now we're just introducing the RAC members. Charlie, or our representative from OSPRG, I believe Charlie couldn't come, and so he was sending someone else. Is the representative for OSPRG on? Again, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Okay, let's go to you, Daria.
Thank you. Hi, Daria McGrew on behalf of Pharma, representing the innovative or branded drug manufacturers.
Well, thanks, Daria. Eric Chung, I think I've seen your name.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Eric, here on behalf of Pyros Pharmaceuticals. I oversee the compliance department here, so happy to join. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Gregory.
Yes, hi. This is Gregory from Endo Pharmaceuticals, senior manager in the government pricing department, and I've been working with drug price transparency since the beginning, so got a lot of experience with it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gregory. And Lynetta.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lynetta Moore. I'm with Integra Chain. We manage compliance reporting for state price transparency reporting for pharmaceutical manufacturers. Nice to see everyone.
Thanks, Lynetta. And Melody, I think I've seen your name.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melody Calkins, representing the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. Our members consist of biotechnology companies, academic institutions, state biotechnology centers, and related organizations, and also representing BioOregon as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melody. And Robert.
Hey, everyone. Robert Judge here from Moda Health Plan, working with the carriers. And man, I've been involved in this program since HB 4005 was a baby in the legislature.
Glad you're here. Thanks, Robert. Are there any RAC members who have joined since we started and haven't gotten a chance to introduce themselves yet? Okay, not hearing any. I'd love to welcome any DFR staff who, oh, Beth Ann. Are you there? We're just doing introductions, Beth Ann. And if you're introducing yourself, you're still on mute. Okay, well, hopefully Beth Ann can hear us, even if we can't hear her, and we can continue doing introductions as we move along. Oh, I'm seeing a note. Karen, did you notice that note that the representative from Osberg can't access the meeting?
Yes, I saw that note. I don't.
And I
I'll
don't
work on
see
that.
anyone in the waiting room.
I know. Okay.
She was waiting for a while. I'll just text her again to join. She was concerned. Charlie wasn't able to attend and he asked Alana to do that. I will text her right now. And I apologize for being late. I have a call that it hasn't quite ended.
Understand. Thanks for being here, Beth Ann. Karen, do you mind forwarding this invite to Alana one more time, just to make sure she has it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Now you're asking me to do two different things.
Introduce yourself and
one
do that.
screen from one screen to another. Okay. I'm Karen Winkle, and I'm the rules coordinator for the Division of Financial Regulation. And I'll be the one that will eventually file this rule or rules to the Secretary of State.
Thanks, Karen. Karen is doing a lot of things for us right now, like always, sharing the slides, doing the recording, and all of the invitations to you. So I will try to stop asking you to do more things, Karen. Sophie, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure, I am here. My name is Sophia Para. I am the program coordinator for the Oregon's Drug Price Transparency Program, and I'm just here on behalf of the program. I'll mostly be watching and listening.
Great, thanks. Any other DFR folks who would like to introduce themselves?
Hey, good afternoon. Numi Griffith, Senior Policy Advisor and former Drug Price Transparency Program Coordinator, just listening in today. Thanks.
Thanks, Numi. And it looks like Alana, yeah, go ahead, Sophie. That was an accident. It looks like Alana was able to join. Would you like to introduce yourself, Alana?
Yeah, hi. Sorry about the technical difficulties. My name's Ilana Lin. I use they, them pronouns, and I work for Equity Action Partners as a government relations coordinator. And today I'm representing Osberg for Charlie Fisher. I look forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. So glad you could be here, Alana. Are there any other DFR staff or any RAC committee members who haven't yet gotten to introduce themselves who would like to?
I forgot to mention that our compliance specialist, Sally, is listening in too. So if anybody were to have anything like that, we've got her on the call too. Ralph.
And thanks, Lily. Ralph Magrish, Executive Director, Oregon Prescription Drug Affordability Board.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ralph. Okay. Karen, if you could go to the next slide. So just some housekeeping. I think people are doing that already, all of these things already. I'm not sure if we'll have bandwidth issues. So if you want to, feel free to stay on camera. We'd love you to be on camera if possible while you're speaking at the very least, just to make those connections. And anticipating that people will, have a number of comments and want to discuss, please use the raise hand function when you're wanting to make comments, just so we can, I can do that in a more orderly fashion. The chat is open. Sometimes I do have a hard time remembering to check that. So feel free to just raise your hand or take yourself off mute if I'm not noticing something. And like always during RAC meetings, we will have time reserved for public comment at the end, if anyone would like to do that. And then I'm sure I'll put this plug in at the end of our meeting too, but I'm sure we'll have a good discussion, and also just wanting to state that it will be helpful for me to have written comments as well, just to, have that in writing to refer back to. All right, any questions about housekeeping issues? Yeah, Daria.
Do you have a deadline yet for your written comments?
Yes, I have that on the very last slide, and I believe it is September 9th. And we can discuss that. But I was trying to give people 2 weeks after this meeting to submit comments, and also anticipating the holiday weekend. Yeah, thanks. Other questions? Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so just a really brief rulemaking overview for those of you who are new to the process, and I know many of you are very experienced, so I will keep this brief. So, as a very general kind of overview, rules are any agency directive or regulation that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy. And you can see the reference here if you're interested in reading more about it. But it's important to note that it does have the weight of law and that it must be consistent with statute. And if you go to the next slide, there are a few more details just around the role of this rulemaking advisory committee. So those of you who are invited are here to represent the interests of those likely to be affected by the rules and to provide your advice and your recommendations. And in terms of, I anticipate potentially having 3 meetings. Maybe there will be, an extra one. It could, go either way depending on how the conversation goes. But at the end of this process, when we've concluded the advisory committee process, there will be a notice and another opportunity for public comment and public hearing. And if there are questions around that, Karen really is your process person. So any questions around the role of our committee or the process itself? Okay, hearing none. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Karen. Thank you. Okay, so just a little bit of background for these revisions, since this is not a new, we're revising rules. So the timing for this does coincide with our 5-year review, which is a large reason why we're opening up these rules. And in addition to that, there are just a number of kind of reasons why it made sense to us to open these rules right now. And some of those are just general updates. Now we have the statutory citation. We can kind of streamline the rules a little bit by getting rid of some outdated timing requirements. And, some of you were here when the original rules were being promulgated, and I watched, or rather listened to those recordings. And we really have the benefit of having run this program for 5 years, and the benefit of our program team and the insights of all of you who have been reporting. And so we really thought there were some things that we could do in rule to ease the administrative burden for both sides, clarifying some definitions and adding some details for, requirements that are just regularly misunderstood. And we also wanted to increase clarity on some of the reporting requirements. And before I move on, I do just want to say that as many of you know, the lawsuit that was initiated by the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, or PhRMA, in 2019 is ongoing. And as announced earlier in the year, the program suspended annual price increase data reporting following the district court's ruling in February. Currently, the program permits manufacturers to voluntarily report price increase data. And as you may have seen in the draft rules, we plan to make some minor rule changes related to the voluntary reporting of the price increase data. And we welcome your feedback on whether those changes are clear. As usual, we cannot comment further about the ongoing lawsuit or appeal. Okay. With that, are there any questions around the background or housekeeping or any other items before we dive into the rule changes? Okay. And so you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Karen. And so Daria, to finally get to your question, what I'm picturing for this process is to, like you saw in the slides that were sent out in advance, show you the questions that we have for all of you on this particular rule. And then we can go, Karen will bring up the rule itself. I'll walk you through those questions, get your feedback, and then leave this rule open for discussion or other questions that you may have. Does that sound like a clear process? So I'm hoping it can be a conversation. Great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. So for the definitions section, we did do a couple things. We added some specificity to new prescription drug and to reporting manufacturer, really in the with the idea to clarify questions that the program regularly receives. So we view these not as a change in the definition, just as a clarification. And so we wanted to make sure that these changes were actually helpful, and also to see if there were any other terms that you all think would benefit from a new or revised definition. Karen, do you want to bring up the rule itself so we can take a look at that? And yeah, and then scroll down a little bit. You can scroll down a little bit more. Of course, it wants you to update something.
Sorry, a little bit more.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Down to 0505 definitions.
Yes, just a little bit farther so we can see. Yeah, we can look at dosage. And specifically, we were wondering, wanted to make sure that the added specificity for new prescription drug and reporting manufacturer provided the needed clarification. So I'll just open it up to the RAC around those two specific definitions to see if our draft changes were clarifying. Yeah, Melody.
Hi, this is Melody from Bio. We would propose to strike the language that states the or a supplemental approval because we believe that supplemental BLAs or NDAs fall outside of the scope of new prescription drugs.
And just because we're not looking at it, Melody, is that under reporting manufacturer? Can you scroll down to that definition, Karen?
That's under the new prescription drug.
New prescription drug. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
I also wanted to second the question about that. If you could explain what it is that is like, what errors you think are being clarified or misunderstandings are being clarified. My understanding of, examples of a supplemental approval with the FDA are often you're changing manufacturing practices or you're changing the labeling of a drug. So to agree with Melody, we don't believe that should trigger something being a new drug if they are receiving, FDA approval for changing a manufacturing site, for example.
Gotcha. Robert, I'll open it up to you first, and then Sophie, maybe go to you. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, maybe it's appropriate to have the discussion around the point that's being raised. I was going to raise another point, so I'll hold off until.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Sophie, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to just to mention that we get questions about additional NDCs that are new products or new packages, NDCs, and we get questions about whether we expect a report for them, and we do. A lot of questions that we get, and what we're trying to clarify here is that when there's a new NDC, we expect a new drug report. Now, there are occasions where an existing product that's already on the market will have a change in the NDC number or the labeler name, we do not expect a new drug report in those instances. But if an NDC is first coming on the market and has been approved, whether people want to say that it's the same application of previously approved NDCs or some sort of related supplemental application that got fast-tracked because there was already products on the market, we still say that that is a new NDC and we expect a new drug report. And that's what we were trying to clarify with this.
Melody and Daria, do those, does that response kind of answer your question or allay your concerns? Or are you thinking that some different phrasing might be beneficial to clarify what we're trying to get across?
For me, that does answer the question. Thank you. I will need to take that back to my experts on FDA approval because I have some questions I'll ask, and then we will reply further in our letter. Thank you.
Great. Melody,
Yeah,
anything you
same.
want? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, same here. We'll take that back.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Sophie. Robert, let's go to you.
Yeah, it was really on that item 3.
Okay, can you scroll up to that, Karen? Is that dosage?
Yeah, and I was just trying to get, maybe this is a room question, but are there scenarios, and Daria, you guys might be best equipped to answer this, but are there scenarios where the highest amount, strength, and frequency of a drug may result in different prices related to that drug? I'm thinking of a price per unit change in, one strength may be different than another PPU. And so that I think that this definition may need to be adjusted to consider that if that's a thing.
Sophie, it looks like you want, yeah.
I'll speak briefly if that's okay.
Mhm.
One of the things that we get a question about a lot is trying to make a determination on the cost of a 30-day supply. And we will get questions about, we have different diseases that are being treated with the same product. We have different frequencies that could be within the range of recommended frequencies.
Yeah.
And so we say when there's a range or multiple recommended dosages or a range, depending on the condition or the person themselves, is whatever's within the recommended range, we tell them to look at the highest recommended dosage, frequency, whatnot, like, maybe once a day or twice a day for some people. If that's still in the recommended range, then we tell them to use the twice a day to determine if, for making those determinations on the cost of a 30-day supply.
Yeah, so just to think, Sophie, to add on to that, I believe dosage, I need to search the document quickly. But dosage, we define dosage mostly because it appears in the 1-month supply definition, and wanting to clarify that. So again, going to the kind of threshold question. Yeah, Gregory.
Yeah, you had just touched upon the 1-month supply definition, and I see that within that definition, you're proposing changes to include the portion of course of therapy. So for instance, drugs that may not be taken over the course of 30 days, but rather a shorter time frame. And then in other sections, you're striking the course of therapy language. I'm just trying to make sure that this is just a consolidation of the definition into one spot, and then that 1-month supply will include both the 30 days and the course of therapy across the rest of the ruling.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And if that's not clear with the language changes, then we definitely want to know that. But that was our intent, is just to kind of streamline, so we're not having to say, or a course of treatment lasting less than 30 days in all of those definitions.
So the only one thing then I would mention is that in the form and manner requirement for the drug pricing reporting.
I noticed already. I missed one.
Okay.
Is that what you were gonna say, where I corrected the one but didn't strike it?
I just wanted to make sure it was,
Yeah.
that there was some consistency there, so, okay.
Yes, when I pulled the rules up this morning to review them again, I noticed that error. So no, thank you. Thank you for noting it.
Okay, thank you then.
Yeah, good. Alana, go ahead.
So under 11, section little d, I don't know the proper way to say it. I just wanted to clarify, is that exempting 503B facilities from the reporting requirements, or what is that section doing?
Let's see, so you're talking about where, under the definition of reporting manufacturer and D. Yeah, so, yes, under reporting manufacturer, we do not want that to include, people who are only registered as 503B facilities. So that only is the important piece there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Daria.
Hi, since we're right there, we had a question about the about C, where you're getting at contract manufacturers. And so I just wanted to say, we think that the addition of including but not limited to actually is more confusing. So if your goal, because that could open it up to other undefined things. So if your goal is to get at contract manufacturers, then we would strike including but not limited to and just say something like, it manufactures directly or through contract manufacturing agreement with other entities to be perfectly clear about what it meant.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And just to be clear on that part too, is that we're going for the person who is setting the price. And if someone else is making it for them, then that company likely does not have to even register with us because they're making products that other companies are selling. And so this is the company that's selling the product that needs to be registering and reporting with us.
Thanks, Sophie. So this is exactly the kind of conversation I had hoped we would be having. And I do want to bring up, are there items, are there things that we need to define that we haven't defined here? We as an internal group had kind of thrown around some other concepts to maybe define, but determined that we weren't sure that it was necessary, but wanted to open that up to the group as well, knowing that you have not, we haven't, finished revising the rest of the rules, so we can, again, revisit this conversation when we have looked at the rules in total. I just wanted to bring that up now, if there are other terms that would be useful to define. Certainly not the last opportunity you'll have to comment on that or anything else. Before we move to the next rule, are there other comments on the definition section? Okay. Not hearing any. Let's go ahead and go to the next section, the account generation requirement. And Karen, instead of making you flip between things, which I know is annoying, why don't you just, do exactly what you're doing? And I'll read out the question that's on the slides, and people can pull that up on their own if they want to too. So in the account generation requirement, you'll see some changes, but really what I consider to be the most substantive changes are in 2, that last paragraph, where we make some changes, added language to try to avoid common circumstances where, as I understand it, manufacturer contact information is outdated in IRAG, and the program isn't able to successfully contact the manufacturer about important requirements for notifications around reporting or around trade secrets. So it's really meant to try to prevent those circumstances from happening. And so we'd really like your input on whether or not this is clear and if there is any additional clarity needed for the new contact requirements.
I'll just go ahead and add a little bit in here too, that we have found when we did some review of accounts that there were only third-party companies like, the Integra chain represented at this meeting on the account sometimes, and there was no employee of the manufacturer. And it's extremely important that the manufacturer, who is ultimately responsible for everything, even if they hire a third-party contractor to assist them, they're ultimately responsible for everything on the account and could miss important deadlines and such. So that's one of the reasons that we have put this on here, that it's important and vital to have a manufacturer employee on the account with current information. And we usually recommend 2, because sometimes people change jobs or are on vacation and they could miss important deadlines.
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, Lynetta.
I just had a quick question on, we do work with a lot of companies that are, bringing their first product to market. And of course, they're waiting for the FDA to give them approval. So, if they register 10 days prior to the reporting deadline, whichever is earlier, the 30 or the 10, a lot of times they don't know. And a lot of times they're waiting for that approval, and they may get a CRL or something of that nature. And if we register them earlier or assist them with this registration earlier, it's hard for us to know what that, their marketing date is going to be, because that's one of the questions on the registration. Is there some type of, for those pre-commercial customers, that's a really difficult thing for them to know how to do this in advance? Is there something that we could, how could we add some clarity or something that we could do there? Because a lot of times we don't know what their market entry date is going to be. They're estimating that because they haven't received those approvals yet.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
a great,
just kind of
yeah.
try to think about what can we do, because sometimes we register them or assist them with registration and it's way too early. And, they may not get their approval, they get a PDUFA date, they may not get their approval in a timely manner. They may get a CRL and their approval doesn't come, a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later. It just really depends. So it's hard for us to help them stay within that time frame.
Yeah, I'm hoping that some of the clarity here will also help remind folks that a new drug report is not, due date is 30 days after it has been first marketed. Therefore, we have stopped registering companies that do not have an approved product. So if you try to register early, we likely will say no, wait till you get approval. Some companies don't get approval. You don't always get when you ask. So we have stopped registering companies when they do not have a product on the market, to prevent billing or other communication issues and things like that for a company that really is not a reporting manufacturer. Therefore, we would suggest that you just wait until it's approved. You've got 30 days to file, a new drug report. We do try to be pretty quick, but we can give ourselves a 10-day, at least let us know at least 10 days before that filing deadline, which it would be 20 days after it's come to market. And so I think there's enough time built into this. And if you do have any concerns about the timeline that this is allowing, then you can let us know.
Thank you.
Does that kind of answer or respond to your concerns, Lynetta?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that we can help our pre-commercial customers with the best advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other thoughts about this rule? Either around the contact requirements or, the kind of timing, the filing timing. Sorry, the account timing. Okay. I try to give long pauses to let people think about things. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one, the next rule, Karen. Perfect. This is the threshold for reporting drug price increase. And again, we're seeing, so what this is really doing is, I'll just say we don't have questions about this necessarily because we are, again, trying to streamline that definition of 1 month supply, and then also making clear that this is voluntary. So our main question, you can scroll down a little bit, is just whether or not it is clear that this data reporting is now voluntary. Oh yeah, Alana.
So the way that I was reading it was that all drugs from 2018 meeting the criteria must be reported, and then drugs from 2024 on will be voluntarily reported. Is that inaccurate?
I believe that is correct. I'm much better at, and again, this February 16th date aligns with the date of the district court ruling, when that changed. Sophie, were you going to add something in?
Yeah, my understanding is that once that date occurred, we can, even if a report would have been due prior to that date, our ability to enforce reporting is voluntary.
And that includes the data from 2018?
That
I think
that includes any reporting, yeah. That
Okay.
So we're in a pause right now, and basically, we can't answer anything related to the court case at this time. So it's you're kind of asking questions related to the court case.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
No. Thanks, Alana. There are other questions about this section. Yeah, Melody.
So while we support updating the trigger from the 2018 threshold to the 2024 threshold, at least that's how we're interpreting it. We wanted to see if you could clarify further that the threshold tracks with whatever CMS's threshold is for that plan year. So that way it doesn't become a static price point.
Yes. And that does happen in, is it just the next rule?
Let's probably go on to that one.
Yeah, is this what you're talking about, Melody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brett, did you have a comment on that also?
Just full agreement. She took my bullet point, so no need to prolong it.
It's always nice when that happens. Yeah, so since we've
Third that one.
Okay, wonderful. So just for those of you who maybe this was not on your bullet point list, what we're doing here is the CMS threshold for reporting a new prescription drug changed, and when the programs first started, the threshold was set to the 2018 final call letter, which was $670. And you can see that here as, number 3. And we're updating that to the 2024 final call letter, which is $950. And for those of you who might be wondering why we can't just refer to the most current final call letter, that's because of some constitutional issues. Where we're not allowed, just in the state of Oregon, are not allowed to delegate authority kind of on an ongoing basis to other entities. So, well, that would be nice, would simplify, some rulemaking to just be able to say, whatever the most current one is, this is how we need to do it to be in compliance with the Constitution. You'll also notice that's why we took the threshold out of the definition section. It just kind of streamlined things down here. Are there other questions around this threshold rule? Yeah, Lynetta.
So the date of introduction is the FDA marketing start date or the date the product is first listed for sale. Are you referring to listing in the pricing compendiums there?
this is one of the items we had a question about, of whether or not the date of introduction was clear enough. Sophie, is this something you're able to comment on? Lynetta's question.
Yeah, I'm not certain of some of the wording that we're trying to use, but I think basically it would be a start marketing is kind of what we would consider the date that the drug entered the market.
Yeah, so this has been longstanding in the industry. So the FDA marketing start date is, a lot of times manufacturers will use an approval date, and it's not necessarily when it's first introduced to market for sale. And that feeds over into daily med. And then a lot of times what the manufacturers will do then is they will list their products when they actually, is the first sale date. There's some CMS concerns around this as well. So it's kind of a difficult thing, because a lot of times they'll use their approval date, but that's not necessarily when the product is actually, available commercially in the market. So this is kind of where we've kind of struggled a bit, because one system feeds to another system and down on into, from the SPL that list it with the FDA to Daily Med, and then over into the pricing compendiums. So you can have disparity in those dates. In the pricing compendiums, you'll see the marketing start date as listed with the FDA, but you'll also see a WAC effective date. And a lot of times the WAC effective date is more reflective of when the product is actually available for first sale. So we're trying to kind of get an idea of what would be the best thing that's being used for this. We certainly want to be compliant and provide our manufacturers with the best information. So these dates are not real consistent, and they haven't been in industry for years. At least for the 23 years I've been in industry, this is something that's been kind of a difficult thing for industry to deal with. So what is your recommendation, or is there something that we could get a little closer to on that date?
Yeah, I'll just speak that our expectation for filing reports is the date that is related to the date that the drug enters the market. And so the earliest date that can happen is the FDA approval date, which is usually what we look to on the directory as the marketing start date. Yes, we are aware that some companies tell us, well, we didn't actually put it on the market. We were building stuff. We were getting ready. We weren't sure when we were going to get approval. We didn't want to do some of this stuff ahead of time. And it might be 6 or 8 months down the road before the drug actually enters the market. And so that's the date that drug actually enters the market is what we intend here. So if this wording helps understand, bring that understanding, then this is the wording. This is good wording. If it could be clarified, then that might be something we could do to help too.
Yeah. So the date the product is first listed, I think is possibly where it's not as clear. The FDA uses commercially available. That might be something that would be helpful. And also CMS has just come out with some finalization on that as well. Commercially available, I think, would help with that in that definition.
Yeah, we won't be using commercially available because not all products are put on the commercial market, but they are being sold. So I don't think we will be using that term, but we'll see what we can do to look at some other terminology. I'll let others speak on their thoughts.
Well, and before we go to Robert, Lynetta, I would just say, really welcome your suggestions also via, written comment. Yeah. Just, to give, everybody more time to think about it and to process things. So yeah, really, really welcome recommendations. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking more towards usage. It's one thing to kind of capture the data as we're in defining this date accurately, but as I think about how the DPT works and how the data sources that they're actually working with, we usually I understand that DCBS is using the compendium reference price, either a data Medispan or some other drug price reference source. as where they draw other information. So is there any logic? I don't know what the delay is between when a product is approved and made available commercially and when it shows up in a compendium, but would it make sense for us to think of it in that term when it's available in a compendium?
That's typically referred to as the WAC effective date. So that
Yep.
is that's a good suggestion and something that I can certainly put in writing some of that information if it would be helpful.
We welcome all, written comment, definitely, recommendation. Thanks, Robert. I think next we have Daria. Or Robert, if you were, I don't mean to
I'm
cut you
done.
off if you weren't done.
I'm
Okay. Go ahead, Daria.
Thank you. I will take this back to our experts to look for a suggest a better language. I just wanted to answer the question of whether this was clear. No, I don't think it's clear. So
okay,
just to,
please help us then.
we will see if we have any other ideas. But I think Lynette is probably even more expert on this than we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Daria. Melody.
We recommended to clarify this that maybe you all could put in a source for the FDA start marketing date, like the FDA's NDC SPL data elements file, which might be clarifying.
Thanks for sharing that, Melody. Are there other comments on this rule itself and any portion of it? Okay. Well, it sounds like we will particularly look forward to some help getting this clarified, this section. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and go down to the next rule. And this expectations, you'll see we didn't have any questions about this for folks, but wanted to, again, open it up if any of you had questions or concerns about this, the changes we drafted in this section. Go ahead, Daria.
Hey, thank you. I wanted to know what the rationale for removing the good faith effort language. We do have concerns about that, but wanted to just first find out why that was.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for asking. So the reason that we're proposing to remove good faith effort is that it's really not defined in the insurance code or in this rule at all. And so it did not seem to be a meaningful phrase to us. From listening to the recordings from the 2018 RAC and talking to people who had worked on that, I understand that it seemed really important at that time because the program was completely new and there were concerns around, potential enforcement efforts that might have been taken for really minor mistakes or reasonable misunderstandings. And 5 years in, we think the program has really shown that that's not that's not our kind of manner of thinking in terms of enforcement. And so we just don't think it's a meaningful phrase to have here. If folks, do feel strongly for some reason, and it is providing a lot of benefit, we would really welcome written comments to help define that. But to us, it just did not seem necessary any longer.
I think we will definitely comment on that. Our manufacturers do believe that is a meaningful phrase when it comes to compliance and liability. They don't want to be, they want to do the right thing and they don't want to be penalized for an accident of not doing the right thing when they have, attempted as best they can and put in a good faith effort to do that. So that is meaningful to our members.
Well, we'll look forward to, hearing about that in your written comment and suggestions for definitions for that, so it can be really clear. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same boat on that. I mean, recognizing that it's currently, I guess we're currently voluntary, and that the department has not taken overly significant enforcement actions But this department can change, and there could always be a new governor, a new attorney general, and so having that type of language in there does certainly give some comfort, as I'm sure you can imagine, to our members. So we would
Thanks for sharing
support
that, Brett.
something like that in there as well. Now, it doesn't have to be the same wording, but something along those lines that does give both the department and the manufacturers some flexibility in having that kind of a back and forth in trying to provide the same information. Terminology can be different. One employee at one manufacturer could interpret a request for information differently than another employee at a different. So it's just having that flexibility, I think, is important.
Thanks for sharing that, Brett. And again, I'll say, really welcome your written comment around how to define this, or, like you're saying, a different kind of phrasing might be more clear. Welcome ideas for that too. Yeah, Melody, go ahead.
We also echo those concerns because throughout the information requested, it frequently requires manufacturers to make reasonable assumptions. And so that contains highly confidential and trade secret information. So removing that good faith effort standard would increase the level of risk and scrutiny for manufacturers and make it more difficult for us, for the industry to cooperate and provide input.
Thanks for sharing that, Melody. I'll just echo what I've said again, but briefly. Welcome your written comments on ideas on how to make that that phrasing more clear and meaningful. Other comments around this? Okay, let's move on to the next one, the form and manner requirements. And again, this, like I had mentioned on the other drug pricing reporting, really asking just, whether or not this change, making it voluntary, is clear. If there's anything else we need to do to make that more clear to folks. Yeah, Gregory.
So I'm not familiar with all the rules in the legal case that was going on with it, but as I understand it, there are still requirements for other portions of this reporting, particularly the financial assistance program is still mandatory. Maybe having something in the rules saying that these reports are still in effect, so that when you read this and you say, okay, all this information about the price increase is no longer necessary, but still have a reminder there that the financial assistance reporting is required. And that may be in there. It's a pretty big section of text there.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Gregory. And one of the reasons why you don't see that additional, sets of text because the form and manner was so long is that we thought it was long and kind of hard to parse out. So we are proposing breaking it up into different rules. And we'll just have those other sections available at the next meeting. And I'll just note that all of our proposed changes here and then in future, rules, rulemaking sessions are consistent with our director's guidance in the DFR bulletin that addresses this court case 2024-3. Yeah, go ahead, Daria.
Sorry, maybe this is related, or maybe I just forgot. If you could go back up in 0520, the section on the CMS threshold. There is a reference, an edit to an OAR 0530 that is changed to 0531.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, I was noticing that this morning, and let's see, we're almost there.
0520.
Yeah, one more up, Karen. I think it's just scrolling up a little. Yeah, there we go. Yes, I know what you're talking about, Daria. And you know, I did not double check what that reference, you know, because I've started working on the other ones, but they're not ready yet. So I think that's something that we'll just flag to, you know, make sure it's consistent and correct. And this is around the new prescription drug. Yeah.
So on that,
Mhm.
in the next meeting, will we have the next
Yes,
tranche of edits? So because
exactly.
we don't want to finalize one without understanding how it.
Exactly. Yes, I'm not.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So let me talk about that just a little bit, if there are concerns. So how I am doing this rulemaking is, you know, because there are so many sections, and some are kind of long, decided to break it up into different groups of rules so that we would look at this rule this time. Next time we would look more, you know, at the next couple of sections. And I will not be considering, you know, anything final until we have all of our meetings. You know, again, you know, with the example of, are there any other things we need to define? You know, I would not want to finalize that today before we've had a chance to go through all of the draft changes in the rule. So please don't, I should have been more clear about that in the beginning, but yeah, please don't worry about that. I will, you know, we consider all of these open the whole time and know that they, you know, portions of them hinge on one another. Does that help allay any concerns, Daria?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are there other questions? I think we had just been on the form and manner, just the last section that we shared this time.
Oh, and those of you familiar with 0530 will probably notice that 3 and 4 are missing from that, and that's because they are going to become their own new rule. Lily has smartly broken them apart, and we just left the price increase one because it's voluntary and we're not making any other changes to it. So it's remaining there, but the other two sections for patient assistance programs and new drug reporting are broken out into new rules, which will be at a future meeting.
There can be some benefits to being, like myself, a new person coming into these rules and being like, oh, well, this is hard for me to read. What can we do about that? And also very helpful to have all of the expertise and history that many of you are bringing. So before we move to public comment, I just want to open it up to see if there's anything that people would like to discuss, that committee members would like to discuss before public comment, something that we haven't gotten to touch on yet or that you've just thought of.
We've covered everything that I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
Thanks for confirming, Daria. Yeah, go ahead, Melody.
We've also wondered if, of course, supporting the change from mandatory to voluntary reporting, but if there could be additional language added that to clarify that no punitive action will be taken against manufacturers that choose not to report.
Can you talk a little bit more about why you think that might be needed, since it is now voluntary, just so we can better understand that position?
I think some of our members were just hoping to add that clarifying language just for security.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Any other questions or comments on the portion of the rules that we've been talking about so far today? Okay, well, next we'll move on to public comment, and we're a little bit early for public comment. Is that okay, Karen? I assume that it's
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
no problem.
And Karen, how do people usually raise their hand and then we call on them to do public comment
Yeah,
or
that-
put their name
that
in the
would-
chat? Okay.
You know, either way, it's your preference.
Okay.
So I think folks are used to raising their hand, so
Yeah, great.
I would do that.
That sounds wonderful. Well, if anybody would like to make a public comment, now is the time, and please raise your hand and we will call on folks in the order that your hand is raised. Okay. Not hearing any interest in public comment. I will note that at all of our future RAC meetings, we will also have opportunity for public comment. So please don't hesitate. And we are also glad for people who are just here listening and don't want to make public comment at this time. Okay, Karen, if you don't mind switching back to the PowerPoint and going to the next step slide. Yeah. Oh, good. I did remember my date correctly. So I am proposing that written comments are due at the close of business on September 9th. And I'm also proposing that our next meeting is September 19th. And part of and I'm going to try to do it earlier, knowing that some of you are not on the West Coast and not wanting anyone to be forced to stay here past 5. Apologies for those of you who are doing that today. And when Karen sends, so my kind of thought for the timing is that you have a couple weeks to get your written comments in, and then I will have a week to review those comments, make changes to the rules, and then still get materials out to everybody, hopefully a week in advance of the next meeting. So that's kind of my thought process is give you a couple weeks, give myself a week, then give all of you a week to review things before our next meeting. And if there are concerns about either of these timings, please feel free to speak up now, Daria, or if you get calendar invites, feel free to comment on those too. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, 2 things about that date. One is earlier in the day, there is a PDAB meeting. And then that after the PDAB meeting, I am not available.
Sorry, what was that after the PDAB meeting? What?
I'm not available for the rest of that day, so that would be.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, potentially this day will change.
Can the 19th is a Thursday, the PDAB's on the 18th.
Okay, I thought we had cross-referenced.
Okay, sorry. I'm reading my calendar.
Try not to do all things drugs on one day. But what
I am reading my calendar wrong. You're right.
Totally understand. So, we will send these dates out and put them on the website as well. And don't hesitate to reach out to me and or Karen and Sophie if you have concerns or questions about this. And the other thing that I will say is that the next meeting, I anticipate us reviewing any changes that I've made to the rules we reviewed today. Again, not considering them finalized at that point. And then also reviewing the next kind of tranche of rules that would be new for us to discuss. So reviewing things we've talked about today and any comments that I receive in the meantime, and then reviewing the next section as well. Are there any questions about that process or dates or anything else? Okay, I've been waiting awkward amounts of time long enough. Thank you all so much for your engagement and participation, and I look forward to getting written comment and meeting next time in September. Have a great rest of your August, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.